Hello and welcome to the morning after show. My name is Joshua Reimer. I'm joined by none other than Jared Block, who is on my right. Jared, how you doing? It was a fun little Sunday. It was a nice weekend. I know you had a really good weekend because you saw your Halloween costume and that was a blast. So, anything you want to talk about that you did over the weekend?
Yeah, had a couple. I went to a party on Saturday. Had a good time with some friends, and yeah, was a good night. Brought out some old internet memes along with it. My entire friend group just like dressed as things that we thought like we didn't care what the rest of the people thought. We just liked what we had. We had a
Uh,
lot of people that were. We had one of my best friends was Burt Macklin from Parks and Rec.
nice.
So that was a good time. But yeah, just one of those weekends where it felt good to see a bunch of old friends that I don't get to see normally. And since it's in football season, everybody, I'm sure you get this a lot too, whether it's in text or in person, where everybody's always asking you football questions, and you're like, I just want to have fun. Just don't talk to me about football for like an
don't
hour.
Please don't talk to me about work. I don't want to talk about work. I just want to just relax and have a good time. Yeah, see,
Yep.
I we haven't like made our friend like we have a few acquaintances in Nashville. We haven't made our friend group in Nashville, but for Thanksgiving I'm going back home to North Carolina and I'm going to have a day where I get to meet up with all my buddies and boy am I excited for that. Like I cannot wait to see my friends again. But like also, even if I did have a friend group here in Nashville, I wouldn't have time right now. Like, there's just too
Yep.
much work stuff to get done. I barely have time to get all my work stuff done. How am I going to go see friends? Bacon says good morning. Good morning. How you doing? Anyway, yeah, it was a fun little weekend. I did not have much fun. I didn't go do a party or anything. I had to deal with a sick dog. So like
Yeah.
that was just it's just a blast. And then on top of dealing with content and everything, it was an interesting weekend for sure. But we are here on Monday. It's the beginning of November. It's November 1st. Where's the year gone by? I absolutely have no clue, but I do know that in a matter of 3 days, I'll be getting on a plane to go to Kansas City. And then you're getting on a plane in 4 days to come to Kansas City. And then we get to meet up and have a good time.
Yes, sir. That is true. Can't wait. The days are gonna. This is gonna be the longest week of our lives. That's just saying
Yeah.
it right now, starting today. So,
It's like that week
yeah,
in school, like before Christmas break, where like you're just waiting to get
basically.
off, and yeah, it's exactly like that. It's gonna be a really long week. Charkybot says good morning as well. Good morning, how you doing? So yeah, we have a little show for you guys. We're gonna talk about the world of sports and all the news involved in the world of sports that has happened over the weekend. These Monday shows usually run pretty long. Well, no, they don't run longer. Always do an hour, but they're pretty jam packed because there's plenty to talk about from the weekend. Charkybot says Trevor Simeon MVP. Yeah, we're certainly going to be talking about Trevor Simeon. We're also going to be talking about the new guy in Mike White. We're going to be talking about a lot of things on this show. Before we get started, talking about some NFL, Jared, anything else that you want to touch on?
No, it was an awesome weekend of sports, and we're just blessed in October to get like so many awesome. I don't know, just the fact that the World Series gets to go another game longer, have another pay-per-view UFC card this weekend, and awesome weekend everywhere else too.
Yeah, it's I saw something yesterday about what like how many sports we had going on yesterday, and it was like the sports equinox is occurring. I'll have to
Yeah,
find the
it
tweet.
is.
I
It
think it
is.
was from Bleacher Report, if I remember correctly. But like there was 25 soccer matches going on. Obviously, we had the NFL, we had NHL, we had NBA, we had MLB. Like literally everything is going on right now, and it's a little insane. It's hard to keep up with.
Yeah, no, it really is. And this happens. I mean, now that sports are more on their normal schedule, I feel like the sports world and these networks just don't care. They're going to jam it in all at the same time instead of trying to work around each other's schedules now. So, I mean, I guess that's kind of the case. We can talk about what happens with the TNT crew for Thursday night for ESPN because they moved some stuff around, or not ESPN TNT, but yeah, it doesn't really matter anymore. They're just kind of throwing up every single sport at the same time, and it's great.
Just trying their best, man. They're just trying to keep up with everything that's going on,
Seriously.
just like we are. I can't find the tweet, of course, but hopefully I'll find it later on and I'll retweet it. All right, let's get into some NFL recap because plenty happened in the NFL world or yesterday. I mean, whether it be the Patriots winning against the Chargers, The Buccaneers game was amazing. The Colts game was absolutely insane. Here's my qualm with the Colts game, because I was thinking about this while I was making my coffee this morning. Every year, the Colts and Titans game is always at 1 p.m. on a Sunday. Why does this not get primetime attention, man? Because give this series a primetime game. These games are always good. I'm pretty sure the two games
Always.
last year were good. Pretty sure the two games the year before that were good, and we just never get them on primetime. So like, what's up with that? Why is this always a 1 p.m. series?
I have no idea. I mean, it's probably just I don't know. People just I want to watch it, but if you're looking at like ratings and stuff like that, I'm sure that they can give an excuse for all that stuff. But yeah, you're right. This, like I said, I think we mentioned this a couple times, at least on the podcast and things behind the paywall, that this is always down to the last second, if not overtime, the last 3 seasons. And this usually is more of a competitive thing with the records coming into the game. Obviously, Tennessee has the clear leg up here in the standings, but it usually is the deciding factor of the AFC South. So
No.
uh, I believe that the series is done now. So the next time these two teams would face off would be in the playoffs. So we'll see if the Colts can rally back and we get this thing for round 3.
Yeah, it's going to take a lot from the Colts. They're 3-5 right now. They definitely need to pick it up, but it's not impossible. Just crazy, man. Especially because I found this so funny. Complete announcers jinx here. They were talking about how earlier in the game, like in the second quarter, wow, Carson Wentz has really filled into the role perfectly. He hasn't thrown an interception in 191 snaps. Like he looks so good. That's the longest that a Colts quarterback hasn't thrown an interception since some player from like 20 years ago. And then that interception happens at the end of the game for the touchdown return, and it's just like, yeah, that was bound to come after they said stuff like that. That throw
For
was
sure.
crazy. He threw it with his left hand, and like I was just like, come on, man, like why would you do that? Like that's an awful idea. And then they rallied back, and that was awesome to see them rally back and get a touchdown to go into OT. And OT was even interesting. So it was a good game overall. The sad news that we got from that game, though, this morning is that Derrick Henry has the possibility to be out for the season now. We don't know what's going to happen. We're waiting for an MRI. I mean, what does that mean for this Titans team that is now 6-2 and now at the top of the American, or not the top of, they're at the top of the division for sure, and I'm pretty sure they're at the top of the
I
conference
think
as
they are.
well.
Yeah, I think they are. So, excuse me. This is obviously a huge blow for them. He's the heart and soul of their team. Julio Jones obviously continues to miss with that lingering hamstring injury. I would not be surprised if we heard news in the next 10 hours that they signed somebody or signed 2 people maybe to because nobody's going to be able to come in and take the workload, so they're going to have to try to figure out what they're going to do there. I know Darrington Evans has been dealing with a lot of injuries too with their backups, so they only really have one healthy guy right now, which I believe is Kareem Blossom game. So that's
They
not
have
the
Jeremy
best.
McNichols too.
Okay, so he's back. All right, well, I still think that they're a prime candidate to pick up somebody at the trade deadline, which I believe is tomorrow afternoon.
Yes, it is tomorrow afternoon, 4 p.m. Eastern is when that trade deadline occurs. There's so many options. Adam Schefter tweeted out a bunch of options as well. Let me
Yep.
read through them because I think it is interesting to at least know all these options, because there's some guys on here that like I didn't even think about, but he makes a good point. They probably are available. Where is this three? All right, so Tevin Coleman available, David Johnson or Philip Lindsay available, Tyson Williams available, Melvin Gordon unlikely, but definitely available if they decide to go the Javonte Williams route. Ronald Jones, Mike Davis, Rashad Penny. That's a ton of great running backs. And like
Yeah.
you talk about I mean like league changing implications if you have one of these guys on your bench, or more importantly, they're on your waiver wire and you get to pick them up. I mean, they're league winners in this system just because of how run heavy Vrabel is, and you know how run heavy this offense has always been. I'm not saying you can expect the same workload as Derrick Henry. You're not going to expect 30 touches every day from your running back, but it'd be hard for me to think that you're not going to get at least 20 if you get a lead running back role in this system.
Exactly. So I'm looking at some additional lists here. Todd Gurley obviously is the one that's trending out of all of this, and that should not be a shock to anybody. What I would love to see is for the Titans to not do that. I think that
Oh,
I don't
jeez.
know. They're smarter than that, man. I don't know. They just can't. So I know what they're going to try to do. They're not going to replace him with one guy necessarily, but they do need a guy that's a bigger body. So
Mhm.
honestly, this is kind of a long shot, but I'm willing to go ahead and say that this is probably one of their best shots. Go sign Bo Scarborough. I think that he fits the biggest. He just fits the profile of Derrick Henry. Not as good of a power runner, but he still should be able to be a guy that they can rely on between the tackles in the first and second down.
Bacon says crazy for the Bears to ship Montgomery with his contract up this year. I don't think so. I think you're pretty happy with where Khalil Herbert is at this point,
Oh yeah, yeah. I
and
think it's
you're
Khalil Herbert's backfield right now.
yeah, I like, especially like you said, with his contract up this year. I certainly don't mind shipping David Montgomery. There's a load of running backs that they have available to them. They're just gonna have to make the move and decide on their guy. And
Yep.
it's gonna be interesting to see if who their guy is at the end of the day. Because if this is gonna be a long-term injury, again, like we said, they're 6-2. They're going to need a running back to be in a competing form for the AFC because there's not many, like, I mean, there's a few really good teams in the AFC, but really it's kind of top heavy in all honesty. There's a few good
Yeah.
teams, and then you have a bunch of teams that are very mediocre.
Yep. Really, right now it's a lot of teams with 5 wins, and then it falls off heavily to like teams with two wins or 3 wins. So
Yeah.
this is the type of year right now where the teams start to really separate themselves. I do think that I mean, honestly, we could say the same thing about the NFC, but the AFC is a little bit more concentrated up top. So they don't really have a clear. We thought that the clear team this week was the Bengals, but that obviously didn't go in the right direction either.
Yeah, I right. We really thought. I mean, I remember we were having conversations of playing the Bengals defense, and let's just transition over to this
Yeah.
Bengals team and talk about them and talk about them losing to the Jets. It almost felt like for the whole game that it was like, all right, the Bengals will be back at some point. Like they will be able to win this game and clinch it all up, and it'll be a close one, but you can expect that in football. Every football team. This is what I don't under. I think some people don't understand. Every football team is really good. Like every football team is just filled with athletes, and the difference of you winning over a Jets team winning over a team like the Bengals is just a few minor errors here and there. That's what it is every Sunday. That's why any team can win any given Sunday. And the Jets just showed that they have some fight in them at least. Mike White, absolutely incredible. He's the only QB ever to throw for 400 yards in his first appearance outside of Cam Newton. That's the only other
Yeah, that's
QB who's
crazy.
done it. It's a crazy stat when you think about it. And like it was just such a good game against the Bengals. They had the right game plan. They stopped Joe Burrow. They had great coverage on Jamar Chase for the majority of the game, which was extremely important. And they ended up getting the win. So good to see the Jets get the win. What do you think this means for this Bengals team though?
I think the Bengals are fine. Again, it was a spot yesterday where you thought that it was like, oh, don't worry, they'll come back down and score because they were scoring at will early on. But it was really impressive to see some of those defensive stops from the Jets, just the willpower to just not give up, even when they put in. I, man, his first name escapes me, but Johnson when he comes in here after being a backup for like 13 years, playing on 13 different teams, comes in, and then Mike White comes back in the game and scores the Philly special touchdown. That was
Yeah.
pretty impressive there. So I think the Bengals are still good. I think that they will need the deadline tomorrow in order to really bolster themselves in a good position. Because right now, I don't think any. And this is a good point to bring up. I don't even with Derrick Henry still not on this team. I don't think anybody's beating the Titans right now.
Anybody, really. Well, yeah, I guess you're right
Yeah,
because the Bills didn't beat I was like the Bills are definitely going to beat the Titans, Jared. What are you talking about? But you're right, the Bills didn't beat the Titans. So I mean, that's a good point. I don't know if anyone is going to beat the Titans right now. Think the Ravens could do it at 5-2? Like I feel like the Ravens
sure.
probably have the best outside chance of doing it. I don't think that Raiders team beats the Titans. I really don't think the Chargers beat the Titans either after what I saw yesterday. You have a good point. Maybe this Titans team is like it felt kind of fraudulent when you kept hearing that the Bengals were at the top of the AFC yesterday, right? Like they came into that game at the top of the AFC, tied with the Titans for the top, and it always felt kind of fraudulent. But the more we look at this Titans team, the more you realize, hey, maybe this isn't a fraudulent team. Maybe this team is just going to be the top team in the AFC.
Yeah, so before I get into that, to your point that you said earlier about how NFL teams are extremely close and NFL games are always close, and we kind of we kind of we dog on bad teams and we dog on like some of the teams are bad, sure, but they're still in the NFL. And honestly, if games are, I would say if games are within a touchdown on the point spread, this furthers my point even more when I say that NFL games are decided not through the 60 minutes of gameplay. It's decided between like anywhere from 3 to 4 plays that actually make the momentum and shift things, and actually the talent exceeds in that specific example. So I think that, and I've heard this been said before, which is where I'm pulling it from. But yeah, most NFL games are decided between anywhere from 3 to 4, even 5 plays, and the majority of the time is a pretty even match for the most part.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, it's always like you said, we dog on the bad team so much that you think like, oh, like they're nowhere near the talent level of a Titans team or a Ravens team or a Rams team, but like any team can win. Their talent is very similar. It's just like you said, those 3 to 4 plays, not making little minor mistakes is so important, and that's what ends up winning you games. All right. Anything else in this game? This is it's going to be interesting to see how this Bengals team recovers. And I don't know if they've already had their bye week yet, but I'm sure a bye week would be much appreciated for this team right about now.
Yeah, it looks like they have not. Their bye week is in week 11 or week
Okay.
10.
So a
So
little bit down the road. Well, next week, but a little bit
yeah,
down the road.
tough matchups coming up for them. The Bengals have the Browns, they have the Raiders, the Steelers, the Chargers, and the Niners coming up. So very interesting how that's going to pan out. They could easily be a 500 team at the end of the season. They have some
Yeah.
AFC West matchups to go through as well. Fun fact: the Ravens do not play the Titans in the regular season.
Ooh, it'd be fun to see a rematch of that in the playoffs because I'm sure everyone remembers. Was it last year that the Ravens were the 1 seed and the Titans ended up beating them in the wild card, or not in the wild card round, the divisional round? I don't know. It was recently though, and it would certainly be interesting to see that rematch go on. Um, all right, let's talk about the Bills and let's talk about the Dolphins. This one feels like kind of an easy layover spot, but the Bills it was tight throughout the whole first half. Like I honestly didn't know who was going to win. Then the Bills kind of ran away with it. Josh Allen did Josh Allen things. This team did Bills things, and they held Tua Tagovailoa to a lowly score of just 11 points. What was your takeaway from this game, if anything?
Yeah, the takeaway was that the Bills thought that they were going to steamroll, and maybe they got a little bit of a taste of their own medicine in the first half. That was pretty much it. That's the only thing I could even say because
No.
they ended up steamrolling them at the end. The Dolphins, I guess this is more of a the Bills are fine kind of statement, but the Dolphins are very disappointing, and I don't really know how that's going to affect decisions made in the next 48 hours. We learned over the weekend that the Houston Texans will not be trading Deshaun Watson before the deadline.
Mm-hmm.
So if the Dolphins want to make any moves, they have that to talk about and consider, as well as we have to make moves if we're going to try to do something here.
Do
So
you?
I mean, they're in a spot at 1-7 where like I don't know, do you just tank it at this point? Because it kind of feels like you should when the Jets have a better record than you and you are the same record as the Texans. You actually have one less loss than the Jaguars at this point because they didn't play enough games.
Yeah.
So they're sitting at the bottom of the league. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Do you tank and just go for a top 5 draft pick at this point?
I think so. I think at this point it's about that time. You're at the bottom of the league at 1-7. Look, so there's the Lions who are 0-8. They have the number one pick right now. Then you got a whole grouping at 1-7 with the Dolphins, the Texans, and that's it. And then you have the Jaguars, and those are the four bottom teams right now. I think there's another team with two wins. Yeah, the Washington football team has 2 wins, so they're in that category as well. But then there's a whole grouping at 3 wins, so you're going to see some resistance at that 3 win spot. And then the bottom of the league belongs to those 5 teams that I just talked about. you tank at this point. Like you don't really care about the rest of the season now. I think you look for a good draft pick. Hopefully they own their draft pick. I mean, I don't know if they do or not, but I don't think they've made a trade to where they don't. And this is probably a good year for them to tank because they have the Niners first round pick this year. I'm pretty sure. So the Niners aren't doing anything spectacular right now. They're close to 500, but that'd probably be a top 16 pick at the end of the year. So if the Niners continue not to win very much. So I don't know. It's definitely could be a spot where you could see this Dolphins team tank.
Yeah, it just kind of feels like that. And unfortunately for Tua, it's just more controversy because this was his chance. And I don't know. He played all right. I wouldn't say he played fantastic, but he did, end up scoring that rushing touchdown himself. Um, that's really the only positive that I have to say, though.
Yeah, that's kind of the thing is that I felt like this kind of happened to Drew Lock too. Maybe Drew Lock was a little bit worse of a quarterback than I'm giving him credit for, but I never felt like Drew Lock was truly an awful quarterback. The thing was that his team never won, and that's what you need to have
Yeah.
as a QB starter. Your team needs to win, and if your team doesn't win, then you're out of the QB seat, bud. Like you're gone, and that was kind of the case for Tua. So it's gonna be interesting. I don't know. Do you hope to trade your first round pick for a quarterback, or do you take a quarterback from this upcoming draft?
I outside of Coral, I don't know who I would take next that I feel like
I mean,
super, super
Sam
good about.
Howell's there, Malik Cunningham. There's not many guys that are
Yeah,
that great this
I don't
year,
know.
though. Like the QB class is definitely
Miami
not what it was last year.
Miami's offensive line and defensive line are both horrific. And there's some top 5 draft picks. There's at least 3 linemen in the top 10 that should go and be immediate starters in your offense next year. So I would go ahead and do that. You already are kind of stacked with wide receiver, so I don't expect them to go Chris Olave, but we can talk about that as the season continues. They're starting to leak out like the top 10 projections, and Olave is sitting at like 6 or 7, I think.
Interesting. We'll read out that top 10 because I'm curious.
I'll find it again if you want to
Okay.
just continue. Also, while we transition through that, I found an interesting nugget that the Dolphins win this season, week 1 against Bill Belichick in Foxborough. So
Who would have
now
thunk
the
it?
Patriots are 4-4, and they just beat the Chargers, which in LA for that matter, which is nothing short of impressive, I guess. They're going to find a way to finish above 500 somehow.
Okay, so uh this is interesting. Jay Cruz says, "Don't the Eagles have the Miami pick?" He's 100% right. The Eagles do have the Miami pick. I don't know
Gross.
what that was for, but Philadelphia must be sitting pretty. They still do own a first rounder. That first rounder comes from the 49ers. They have their own
Well,
second rounder. They have San Fran's third rounder. They traded their own to the Giants. I'm sure the Giants are happy about that right now. They have their own fourth, fifth, sixth, and they don't have their own seventh rounder. So, maybe this is less of a question of who are the Miami Dolphins going to take and who are the Philadelphia Eagles going to take with the top 5 pick.
right, right. I think it was for the move up to get Waddle, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. So you're probably right. That's I don't know. I think that Waddle trade bites them in the ass. There was no need to get Waddle, and I mean Waddle looks great, right? But if you're not winning, then how successful was the pick? In all honesty.
Yep, exactly right. I mean, I was already a little bit hesitant. Like I believe in Waddle to an extent, but you can't ask him to be really that physical at his stature. While he's a great wide receiver, man, he need to figure out how to use him. I don't know. He seems like a Will Fuller Jr. to me, and so I guess I think it's going to be a bust pick. But that we'll see. We'll see how it goes. He's been pretty good this year though, so I can't dog on it too much. I do have this list in it right now. I don't know if this is the one that I saw because some of these picks are in weird spots. I actually don't know how old this article is. Yeah, it's old. Never mind.
Okay.
It's old. But I think that everybody was in agreement that Coral's making his way up the rankings, and he's not listed in the top 10 on this list from PFF. This is from September. So the edge number 1 overall pick is edge Oregon edge Kayvon Thibodeau, which is probably still a top 1 or 2 pick in my opinion.
Yeah.
You also have Derek Stingley from LSU, Evan Neal from Alabama, and you have some more it's basically a lot of defensive players sitting at the top, so that kind of fits the NFL mold. You have number 10 overall Sam Howell. So
Hmm.
they we'll see. But I think that I saw in the latest rankings that he moved up the list a little bit.
Yeah. It's certainly going to be interesting. So yeah, you're right. Thibodeau's probably going to go number one, and then you're going to have, Derek Stingley's up there somewhere. Um, Malik Willis, not Malik Cunningham, sorry. Malik Willis, the QB from Liberty, is a stud. Guy's a runner. Guy's a beast. He had the most rushing yards on his team when they faced off against NC State this week. He's really good. You have George Karl Laftis from Purdue. He's a really good edge rusher. There's a lot of talent. It's just not
Mhm.
like it's not positional. It's not skill position talent this year. It's a lot of defensive linemen, offensive linemen, a few secondary pieces in there. So it's definitely interesting, man. I think
Yep.
that having a good draft pick is important this year. I think there is a lot of talent coming in this prospect or in this draft.
Here's a new updated list as of October 23rd, so not too far away. They actually bumped up Kyle Hamilton, safety from Notre Dame, to the number 1 overall pick, which I don't know. I think you can take your pick there if you're whoever it is. The Lions definitely needed that safety piece.
Mhm.
So Kayvon Thibodeau, or number 2, Evan Neal, offensive tackle number 3. Then we have DeMarvin Leal from Texas A&M, another D tackle. So like you said, not too many like offensive skill players. You have 2 secondary pieces: Andrew Booth from Clemson, Stingley from LSU, Kenyon Green, guard from Texas A&M at 7, Khair Elam from Florida, corner, uh, another another offensive piece, Tyler Linderbaum from Iowa, and then George. I'm just going to mess this up. Karlaftis from Purdue.
Mhm.
He's in there. Olave at number 11 is the first offensive skill player for Ohio State. And then you also have his teammate Garrett Wilson up there too. Drake Jackson from USC, edge, another edge guy, and Aiden Hutchinson from Michigan, who actually he's really good.
Yeah.
So he should be a top 10 consideration. And then you kind of see this, like, again, a lot of offensive linemen, a lot of defensive linemen, a lot of secondary pieces. And Coral comes in on this list at 19. So
Yeah.
interesting there. The guy that you mentioned, Malik Willis from Liberty, looks like he's going anywhere from 23 to 25.
Yeah, sounds about right. I mean, like it's definitely not a QB heavy draft like it was last year. Last year we saw so many great QBs come into the fold. There is not that case this year. There are not a lot of great guys to pick up. Titans are supposedly going to work out AP according to Bacon 23. I get to watch you shake your head as I say that. Good times. All right, we've talked about this enough. Let's move on to another game that we can talk about. Jared, pick your favorite game and let's talk about it.
Yeah, we'll throw the dartboard here and we'll go with, let's talk about the game last night,
Okay,
shall we?
let's talk about the game last night. We saw that the Cowboys and Vikings had to face off against each other. Cooper Rush was the QB for the Cowboys last night, and Kirk Cousins continues to fail in primetime. I mean, what's new? There's some constant things that we can expect in the NFL. It is a pretty crazy league when you consider everything, but one thing that you always know is going to happen is Kirk Cousins is going to fail in primetime. I don't know what you did betting wise, but the only bet I had on the board was Cowboys +3 because I believe in bad primetime Kirk Cousins so much, and it ended up working out for me perfectly. I felt really good about the pick, and it did great. So, what are your thoughts on the game? How'd it go?
Yeah, I took a little cheapo stab at the under on Friday night because
There you go.
I saw a couple things. I follow a few Dallas beat writers that have not failed me yet. So this worked out in my case. The total on Friday was still 52, and it opened at 53, I think, and it went down as soon as the news happened on Sunday afternoon. Went down from 52. At that time, it was like 51 and a half all the way down to 48 and a half in like a half an hour. And then the Vikings went from, or actually Dallas opened up as the favorite here. They were -1 like coming
Oh
into the
wow.
week. And then it went Vikings at -3 on like Thursday and Friday, and then Sunday night trended towards -4.5, even -5 at some books. So I was able to take the under of 52 and bet online. on Friday night, and it worked out really well for me. Outside of that, though, I had most of my chips all in on Dalvin Cook, and they just didn't want to give him the ball. I don't know what it was. It felt like it was the strangest thing. And I know that we're supposed to expect strange things on Halloween, but it seemed like everything went according to plan for the Vikings.
Yeah, it's kind of insane to see that the Vikings didn't give their running backs the balls, and the Cowboys didn't really give Zeke and Tony the ball. Like we talked about it that morning and talked about how it's just going to be the Zeke and Tony game for the Cowboys. Like they're not going to do much else. But Cooper threw the
Yeah,
ball 40 times. Like it wasn't
right.
really the Zeke and Tony game. But I mean, I guess that's what you can expect. Cooper he looked good, man. Like it's hard to not look good when you have this type of receiving core around you. When you have studs like Amari Cooper and Dalton Schultz isn't a stud. CeeDee Lamb, you have Dalton Schultz there, you have Zeke as well. Like you have a ton of options, and I'm really not that surprised to see Cooper look that good. He looked really good. So, what are your thoughts on Cooper Rush? Hopefully, this isn't a long-term injury for the Cowboys, but I'm sure they're not mad if they have to start him in the next week.
Yeah, so if you're a Cowboys fan, you definitely are happy with what happened yesterday. You also are happy that you get two really soft matchups coming up. Both of them are at home. You get the Broncos on Sunday, and then you have the Falcons the following Sunday. And then it gets a little bit tougher after that. So you would hope that Dak Prescott's back for the weekend of this is not Thanksgiving, but they play the Chiefs in Kansas City on November 21st, and then they have a 3 or 4 day turnaround for Thanksgiving where they will host the Raiders. So you would hope to have Dak Prescott back for Thanksgiving, but at the same time, I mean, Cooper Rush is. I gotta be careful here because I think that we all need to realize that he throws 300 yards in probably like 2 out of 10 games that happened last night. So I personally think that without Patrick Peterson, this Vikings defense, if they continue to play in man coverage, they're going to get burned all the time. And you're facing two really, really good route runners in CeeDee Lamb and Mari Cooper. So it makes sense why they won to me last night. But I think we need to pump the brakes a little bit because I think things are going to go in the wrong direction the more times that Cooper Rush is out there because now they have more film. Opposing defenses have more film on him, and he's going to face a really, really tough Broncos secondary and defensive line next week. So I'm holding my breath. I think they can pull it out the next 2 weeks, but from what I see, the Dak Prescott thing, and they already like it happened 2 weeks ago already because they had the bye week. So they were saying anywhere for it's like a 3 to 4 week injury, and then depending on pain management and things like that, like he would have gone if it was a playoff game, he would have played last night. So that was kind of the sentiment around it. But it's a long season and they're 6-1. So if they lose a game to the Broncos or Falcons, it's not the end of the world because their division is just so bad.
Yeah, and I mean they're already in a solid spot, like record wise, like you already said, 6-1 right now. I think they end up going probably 7-2 after this Cooper Rush era for these next two games because I think it will be Cooper Rush most likely. They let Dak get healthy here and then let him come back when they face off against the Chiefs. So that is 2 weeks away. I think that'll be an exciting matchup with Dak back. But, I think they can wait until then. Trevon Diggs also got an injury last night. It's going to be
Yeah.
interesting to see how that pans out. I don't know. Like this Cowboys team, feel like they did what I expected them to do at the very least and win this game. I saw I saw Bet Online put out a tweet. Bet Online, our sponsors, put out a tweet that said in the SpongeBob font where you do like one lowercase letter, one uppercase letter, and you go throughout the whole message. It was like you left Cooper Rush too much time on the clock for that last drive, and of course Cooper Rush ended up doing exactly that. I have a bone to pick with Bet Online social media team, but we'll talk about that soon. All right. Any other NFL stuff that you want to cover? We can cover more tomorrow too. It's just wanted to get through a few games that we could talk about from yesterday's slate.
Yeah, I want to take my victory lap on the Pittsburgh Steelers really quick.
Okay, go for it.
Because I said on Thursday, I know you were off that day, but my take on that game, we didn't know who the quarterback was going to be for that at that time. So I said if Chase Daniel plays, I'm staying, or if Case Keenum, I always see I did it again. Case Keenum.
Always,
If
every
Case
time
Keenum
now.
plays, if he plays, I'm staying away from the game entirely. But if Baker Mayfield is named the starter and he forces his way into the starting lineup, you bet Pittsburgh. And that's exactly what happened. And Jarvis Landry looked like a shell of himself. And Odell had an interesting stat: 1 catch, 6 yards, fewest catches and yards he's ever had in a full game in his career. So
Wow.
would you again? I don't want him. Send him somewhere else. Maybe he gets traded tomorrow.
I saw
But yeah,
some. I see this all the
Cleveland
time.
Browns, yeah, not good if Baker Mayfield's the quarterback right now.
I see this all the time on TikTok where it's like people trying to like saying like they're time travelers and they can pick what trades are going to happen in the NFL. And one of them was Odell goes to the Packers today at 11 a.m. Central Standard Time. So we're about 20 minutes away from the Packers acquiring Odell Beckham. Or maybe that'll happen. We'll just have to see. I don't know. I hope you guys don't get Odell. I just go back to that drop pass that he had while the Browns had a really solid run. Baker Mayfield went for a first down in Steeler territory and ended
Yep,
up getting a late hit in
yep,
the as he was going out of bounds, and everyone thought, "Oh, he landed on the shoulder. He's
yep,
injured." And he gets up and he's all pumped up and fired up for the crowd, and then he throws a dime to Odell Beckham in like 5 yard territory between the end or like 5 yards till the end zone, and he just absolutely drops it. Like it was just like all the momentum that you just built up just completely deflated right in that play right there. And yeah, I wasn't surprised to see them lose, but it is what it is. We'll have to see what that Browns team looks like because you're kind of at the point now where it's like, are as the Browns, are you willing to keep around Baker Mayfield? Like, are you that excited about your future with Baker Mayfield? I don't know if you are necessarily.
yeah. They're gonna stick with him. As
Hmm.
unfortunate as it is, he still is the only guy in the last decade and a half to take them to the playoffs and win a playoff game, or even win a game in general. So I think that he's their guy, and they're just gonna die with him. So their defense is really good. They haven't been able to play Cleveland Browns football, and I'm surprised that they didn't play it more against the Steelers because Dearness Johnson looked great. And I don't know, when they don't have Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb on the field together. Nick Chubb's not 100% right now either, so take that for what it is. But they just they were throwing way too much, and I don't know. The Steelers just had to outlast them and hope that they made mistakes, which they did. I guess we should probably not focus on that game and talk about the real underdog story, which was Trevor Simeon versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Yeah, absolutely insane to see. So I found out this week that my grandpa's a Buccaneers fan, and I was like, "Why?" Because like I called him and he was cheering on the Bucks, and I was like, "Why the hell are you?" Like he's usually a Seahawks fan because of he was a big USC fan, and he was around. We were in California when Pete Carroll was coaching USC, so he loves Pete Carroll and he loves the Seahawks, and yeah, and so I was like, "Why are you cheering on the Bucks? Like, what are you doing here?" And he was like, "Well, I like to see the old guy win it all. I like to see Tom Brady be successful as the old guy in the league." And I was like, "Okay, that makes sense, whatever." But I call him and he's talking about like, "Yeah, there's a whole bunch of BS refing calls and I can't believe they're not winning and blah blah blah." And I hadn't really watched the game because I had NBA research at that point. But I don't know, tell me what you thought. Do you think it's whose fault was it on that Bucks team that they ended up losing?
Well, they did get a lot of penalties, like a lot, to a point where it was like, all right, well, like what do we have to do here? Do we have to like stop the game and tell them that they can't throw any more flags? Because that, officiating is what it is, but that, there's a point to where it's overkill, and this Buccaneers team was just they were playing dirty, and they were also just making some mental errors, and I don't know, it just was not good overall for the Tampa Bay Bucks. On offense, they looked good. I mean, they looked decent, but you can't really run the ball on New Orleans. That was proven several weeks in a row here, and now the Bucks. I feel like you kind of thought that this game was just going to end up being, the Saints go up by a touchdown, Brady comes back, wins the game, kind of thing, and that's what it
Hmm.
felt like all the way up until the fourth quarter.
Oh.
And yeah, I don't know, the amount of no-name players that scored touchdowns or made big plays yesterday was staggering. Like we just saw the Jets game, and I was like, all right, I know who these guys are at least. But like I don't know, they definitely overperformed. So nothing against the Jets, but the guys from the Saints that actually stood up and made plays after Jameis Winston's leg literally detached from his body. I don't know if you even saw that injury, but live it was it looked like when he stepped when he stepped with his foot, it literally turned into a cement pole and then his body literally like ripped out of it. I don't know, it was gross. So don't go watch that if you're freaked out about that kind of stuff. He's definitely done for the season. There's no question about it. But the guys that scored touchdowns for this team, Traquan Smith, who came back from injury early on in the year. You had Kevin White make his first reception since 2018 yesterday, which for those of you who are Chicago Bears fans, you know him as like your biggest bust of the last decade. Um, then you had Mark Ingram, who came back, wasn't involved that much. He carried the ball 6 times, caught 2 passes, but he's back on this team. Uh, Alex Arma scored a touchdown for the first time since like 3 or 4 years ago. I didn't even know who that dude was, to be completely honest. And then you have the guys like Adam Troutman. I mean, Callaway stepped in. Garrett Griffin, fullback, had 3 receptions. I don't even think that I think his first career pass or first career catch was yesterday. Just, I don't know, a bunch of crazy things. And then on the Tampa Bay side, filling in for Antonio Brown and kind of in that Scotty Miller role was Cyril Grayson, who caught a 50-yard touchdown pass super late in the game. And Tyler Johnson played pretty well too. So, I mean, we already kind of expected that Chris Godwin was going to be the majority of the work here, but it was amazing. This game just felt like it was like out of any two teams, I never would have guessed that we would have had the amount of no-name big plays that we did in this one.
Yeah, so we were on the phone for this play, actually, for the Cyril Grayson play, and he's like, "Oh yes, let's go! They scored a touchdown!" And I'm like, "Who scored a touchdown?" And he was like, "Cyril Grayson," and I was like, "I've never heard of Cyril Grayson before," so I was like, "Are you talking about Chris Godwin?" And he's like, "Yeah, that's who I'm talking about." And I'm like, "Let's go!" Like I have Chris Godwin. I know you had Chris Godwin, so I was pumped
Yeah.
up. And then I looked at my phone and saw that it was actually Cyril Grayson. I was like, "Oh well." Now I really don't care anymore, but I guess that's good for you,
Yep.
considering they
Fun
threw it.
fact, yeah. Fun fact about Cyril Grayson. I don't think they really covered this. Maybe they did. I was paying attention to other things after the touchdown, but he never played college football. He was an
Really?
all-American track. He was an American track sprinter at LSU.
Well, he got that. He got to show that off there, right? I mean, that's what you get with a 50-yard. I mean, like no one was near him either, which was insane. I saw a replay of that. I know Bet Online was calling it the easiest touchdown of his career, because like no one was even close to Cyril.
Nope. He also used to play for the Saints too.
Really? See that's that we all have a little revenge narrative. Okay, let's talk. We have so much else to talk about. So, we're going to go through some things pretty quickly here because we have 15 minutes left on the show. Let's talk about some NBA. I don't know how much of NBA you watched yesterday. I'm sure absolutely none. So I will talk about
That's
NBA.
correct.
We saw Kevin Durant go down with an injection or an injury. I'm really not sure what it was. I didn't watch that game. We saw the Hornets and Trailblazers stay extremely close, and we saw your Bucks couldn't contend really with the Jazz. I mean, they tried their best with just Giannis on the floor, but no Chris Middleton, no Drew Holiday. It's kind of hard to end up winning a game without your two stud pieces. And then we saw the Lakers and Rockets. The Rockets looked absolutely awful last night. Rockets were lucky to keep it within 10, and they kind of stormed back in the fourth. But there was a point at the game where they had 24 turnovers through like no, it was like more like two
Oh
and a
boy.
half quarters. It was like halfway through the third. It was to the point where the Lakers announcers were starting to look up what the record was for turnovers, and like that's how bad it was. By the way, for those who don't know, 35 turnovers in a game is a record, at least after the merger, and it was done in 1990s against. It was some team against the Seattle Supersonics. I don't remember what team it was, but super interesting to see that Rockets team was just turning over the ball, and they kept making fun of them. Like, do they like turning over the ball or something? But it was the sloppiest basketball I think I've ever seen from a professional team. Like that Rockets team looks absolutely awful.
By the way, the Kevin Durant ejection was pretty garbage. Not gonna lie. He kind of tried to force his way through a screen on Kelly Olynyk, and Olynyk just sold it. He
Yeah.
also just pushed him. He pushed him to the ground after the whistle, and Durant just he tweeted "oops" on a Thursday and he changed his profile picture to the dude from Brave with all the swords around his neck.
Yeah, he's been getting into a lot of trouble, man. He threw the ball
Yeah,
into the
it's
he threw
true.
the
He
ball
has.
into the crowd, and that cost him 25K. He's been getting into a lot of trouble recently. Anyway, yeah, it was a super boring night in my opinion. It's been a more crazy NFL season than it has been, or at least last night's NBA games weren't all that interesting in my opinion. So sucky 4 game slate. We'll move on to today's where we have a lot more games to talk about. But before, or I guess we're not going to talk about that on this show. Make sure to tune in to the members only podcast for that. And if you aren't an NBA member, just go check it out in the Good Skill chat room. You literally get a free trial this week. Everyone always asks this, Jared. Like, is there a free trial for the product? No, we don't do free trials for the product, but this week is essentially a free trial for the product. So go check it out. You get a week of, I think just cash, right? Or is it all access?
It is all access.
There you go. So you get a week of all access. You get a week of Jared and I. You get a week of just Sean as well. And it's going to be a good time. All right. Let's talk about around the rumor mill really quickly. Any rumors? I mean, I was going to bring up the Deshaun Watson thing, but you brought it up already earlier on in the stream. Deshaun Watson not going to be traded from the Texans. If he does get traded, it'll be in the offseason. But the Texans have announced that they're not going to move on quite yet. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. At this point, I'm just gonna see what happens with it. I do think that he moves on from Houston this year, but we kind of made this call like in July. We didn't think that he was going to play the entire regular season, and it looks like it's going to be that way. You also get Tyrod Taylor back this week, maybe. We'll see how that goes. So, I mean, regardless, I think that there are more interesting spots to think about, and one of those things is definitely that Derek injury news because I I don't know. I have different opinions than a lot of people do on some of these running backs, but if they go with Adrian Peterson or Todd Gurley, I don't. What are you doing? I just don't understand it. So, um, I would much rather just see them go Marlon Mack, but the Colts would never give them Marlon Mack.
No.
Imagine that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think that again they can get some other guys, and why don't you rely on your own running backs too?
Yeah, Jeremy McNichols is not a bad running back. Jeremy McNichols is actually a very talented running back. So I think they might get a running back, but I wouldn't be surprised to see them lean on Jeremy McNichols because I think they've kind of used him in the system the way they want to, and it should be interesting to see if they keep using him. I know like he's going to be the top waiver wire ad probably this week. But going to be interesting to see what happens there. All right, let's talk about inside the park. Let's talk about the MLB. I said I had a bone to pick with Bet Online. It comes here from the MLB. How dare they put into the universe that Atlanta was going to blow a 3-1 lead? Look, it's been like the story of like the last decade, right? Atlanta blows big leads in championship games. We've seen it in the Super Bowl. We've seen it just about anywhere you can expect to see it. And we might see it again here because they put it into the universe. So I don't know how much you watched of this game because it was going on at the same time as Sunday Night Football, but Braves go up 4-0 in the first inning. I'm like, yes, thank
Yep.
them. Like, finally,
Yep.
they can beat the Astros. You get the underdog story. I think it's absolutely awesome to see Atlanta win. And then you see the Astros start to slowly climb their way back in. And then it's tied 4-4. And I'm like, all right, bad. But now it's back to 0-0, essentially. You can start the game over. Braves still have a shot. Freddie Freeman hits this long bomb that was absolutely insane. And, you're like, all right, Braves are back in this. And then the Astros just keep hitting the ball, man. Like it wasn't any big hit from them. It was just
Nope.
everyone coming together and just like, guys keep hitting the ball and guys keep, advancing on base. And again, like I said, wasn't any big like double or triple or even home run. It was just, they just kept advancing. It was a great game for sure. I just, I don't know. I'm sad the Braves lost.
Yeah, it kind of seems like the tide's not turning necessarily, but with their backs against the wall, the Astros showed up tonight, and it was impressive to watch. I think that Martin Maldonado was incredible yesterday.
No.
Uh, Shout out to him, former Milwaukee Brewer. Not that that matters anymore, but he looked great. I mean, this team just continued to hit, like you said, no huge hits necessarily. They just didn't give up, and that was kind of the major thing there. Again, it's going to come down to pitching, right? Like, what are the chess matches going to be like? And Dusty Baker said in his post game that like we had to figure out in the second inning how we could stay within 4 runs. And when you're talking about that from an elimination standpoint, especially in baseball, that's like going down 17-0 in the first quarter of
Yeah,
an NFL game.
seriously.
Like it takes a lot of effort to climb back into those games. Um, at what point do you say, "Hey, Fromber, we're not going to pitch you for Game 7"?
Gotta at least consider it. Like I don't know at what point you decide that, but I don't know. I think you're just super cautious with him when you put him out. But like at the end of the day,
Four
you
innings
probably
pitched.
yeah.
He's only pitched 4 innings in the World Series. Not good.
I no, it's not good. And like I don't know. It's scary to think about because he's done so bad against this team. Um, it's going to be really interesting to see what's going to happen. I think that like you have a different scenario in Game 5 where you have Charlie Morton on the bump or probably a more respected starter. You probably end up winning that game. But it's super interesting to see. Just want to talk about MVP odds really quickly. Jorge Soler now plus 500. Freddie Freeman
Mhm.
plus 600. Austin Riley plus 600. Adam Duvall plus 900. And then you have your first Astro at Jose Altuve at plus 1,000. Then Michael Brantley at plus 1,000. Then it gets back to Braves. Just really interesting to see that the Braves are so heavily favored. I guess that's what you get when you're up 3-2. I want to see what is the series odds at right now. Yeah, Braves are at
Yeah.
minus 240. Astros are at plus 200. I will throw my money at the Astros any day at plus 200 while they are at home for these last two games. And that's the most important piece, right? It kind of plays into what we've been talking about all postseason long, the 2-3-2 thing. If it wasn't the way that they did it and it was like the NBA where it was 2-2, 1-1-1, then this would be a home game for the Braves. And I'd feel a lot
Yep.
more confident in the Braves most likely winning. But now you go back into Houston. You have to face off against Houston in the Minute Maid. I don't know, man. It's going to be a close game for sure.
Yeah, they have Luis Garcia starting for the Astros at minus 120, while Max Fried is starting for the Braves at plus 110. I don't know. Keep an eye on the Astros thing unless that they've already made up their mind on that, but they still have time to change it if they want. So I don't know. I still go with my take of I think that every single game hits the over from here on out, and right now it's sitting at 9. So the bats have finally awoken for both teams, and they know what the matchups are at this point in terms of they came like the whole story about the first couple of games was that these two teams don't play each other outside of like 2 games a year, and at that point, like, do you really care? And now they're getting into a spot where there's a lot of guys just are seeing these pitchers for the first time. Now you're getting to a point where they've seen them 2, 3, maybe even 4 times, and things are going to start clicking for the bats as they did last night.
Yep, going to be interesting to see. This game doesn't start till tomorrow, right? Like we don't get the rest of the World Series till
Right.
yep, on Tuesday, and then close out on Game 7 if necessary on Wednesday. So, going to be interesting to see if the Braves can close it out. All right, last segment before we get out of here. A little bit of Josh's corner to talk about some UFC that happened over the weekend because, man, was UFC a blast. I know that you got to watch a little bit of UFC 267. I watched all of UFC 267. Crazy storylines throughout. It was a really good time. We don't have a lot of time, so I guess we'll just talk about the title fights. Did you get to watch the Peter Yan versus Sanhagen fight?
I did. I did. And I always forget it. Every single time I forget how red Corey Sandhagen gets. And
Yeah.
DC was talking about that. And he was like, he was trying not to make like a race or skin joke, but it came out wrong. And he
Yeah,
said
I
like something
think
about him being super white.
yeah, they were talking about like all the damage showing on Corey Sandhagen from the leg kicks, and he was like, you're always seeing that type of damage on Corey Sandhagen, but it might be his skin complexity as well. And I was like, oof, bad luck, DC, bad luck. The
Yeah.
whole fight was super good, right? Like two super technical fighters. It shows you what the cream of the crop looks like in the UFC. Like when you get to that level, these fighters are so dangerous. And it just goes to the fact that Peter Yan is quite possibly the best fighter at downloading another fighter's game plan into the fight, like making adjustments towards what a fighter is throwing at him and just completely changing everything. And that might sound like it's easy to do, but like when punches and kicks are flying at you at that type of speed, especially with the volume that Sandhagen had in that fight, it's incredibly difficult. but Peter Yan he looked like the stud. He looked like the stud that we expected him to be. I'm not surprised whatsoever to see Peter Yan look like that. But it just proves that like once he gets this bantamweight title from Aljamain Sterling, because I think he does. They're obviously gonna fight, but I think he does end up winning the belt back. Once he does, he's going to be one of those dominant champions at bantamweight. I really don't know who would end up beating him.
Yeah, no, I mean, I thought Sandhagen had a really good shot, but that fight went back and forth too. For what it's worth, I don't know if it was necessarily a domination, as the final scorecards actually said. But yeah, I saw that one. I'll let you talk about Glover, but I wanted to just bring up two things really quick. First, if we had more time, maybe we talk about this closer to maybe tomorrow or maybe on Wednesday when it's a slower show. But what kind of disaster was that refereeing thing for that first, like the second fight of the card?
Yeah,
I'll let you talk on that for a second. But that was one of my highlights. The second one was the Kamaev just taking the dude and literally walking him over to Dana White and having a conversation with him as he took him down to the ground. That was probably the best part of the weekend.
So, like, let's talk. I'll talk about one spot and then I'll talk about the other. The refereeing spot, absolutely insane. Terrible refereeing. The number one job of a UFC referee, you heard it throughout the broadcast a ton. It's something that's always talked about. Number one job of the UFC, of any referee in MMA, is to keep your fighters safe. Keep the guys in the octagon safe as they are able to perform MMA. And he didn't do his job. He didn't keep the fighter safe. Not only did he not keep the fighter safe, but what a bullshit call to take a point from. I forget who he took the point from. I think it was Dos Santos that he took the point from. What a bullshit call to take Dos Santos's point away from him when on that like nut graze right there with that kick. Like he barely even touched him, gave him no warning beforehand, and then took a point. Like I don't know if he was just feeling the heat. You can hear the commentators ringside, so like he probably was hearing the commentators absolutely dog on his performance, and he probably got a little bit nervous and said maybe this will help out, and it didn't help out. It was very easily the worst refereeing I think I possibly have ever seen in the UFC. It's just, again, like I said, it's so important to keep your fighters safe as a referee, and he didn't do his number one job of keeping the fighters safe. There's plenty of times where you could have called that fight, and I respect the guy. Of course, I'm forgetting the names of both of them as I start talking about it.
Yep, Saint Denis was I think he was the French military guy. So like he's not going to quit. They said it on the podcast. I was like, this dude is prepared to die if he has to.
Yeah.
So like, you're not going to stop that. Like Dana White was already out of the arena making phone calls as that fight was happening because he just couldn't take it anymore.
Yeah, and like total respect goes to Saint Denis, but like even as your corner, you probably pull him after that second round.
Because but there was no chance that was happening.
There was no chance that was happening, right? But like a normal corner would have pulled him and said like, all right, you're done. We're calling it. And they just didn't make it happen. So, I mean, like, props to Saint Denis. Good job sticking in there. But, like, at the end of the day, just awful refereeing. And then the Chimaev fight. Dude, it's crazy. Fatty McGee said it in here. Can't believe he's only allowed one strike in 4 fights. He's only got hit once in the UFC. Once. And in 4 fights. Like, the guy's absolutely insane. And now... like he did what not what everyone expected him to do. I think people thought that Li Jingliang would give him a fight in the last one. Like I think they thought that he was going to give him competition in that fight. And dude, like Neil Magny took Li Jingliang down. Like if Neil Magny's able to take him down, why wouldn't Kamaev be able to get that takedown at some point in the fight? I think that, this was to be expected. Now, the question is, when do we see Kamaev next? Like, is he good to go soon? Who does he get? I think you have to give him a top 5 opponent at this point. A Nate Diaz of the world would be really interesting. I know that's the fight that everyone's floating out there. That's the call out that Kamaev had. I feel like that would be an absolute world-class beating. But it would be a good fight because it would kind of give him that recognition that he needs. He hasn't fought anyone yet to give him enough recognition to, like, I mean, obviously I know about him, and anyone who relatively watches the UFC knows about him, but like the guy who only watches pay-per-views probably doesn't realize just how big of a deal Kamaev is quite yet, and I think that they give him a big fight. I think Bilal Muhammad is interesting. Jake Hoos just said that. Bilal
Yeah,
Muhammad,
that would be
very
cool.
interesting fight. Nate Diaz, like I said, very interesting fight. Leon Edwards, rescheduling that because that was his opponent before he got COVID and had to deal with all those symptoms. Leon
Yep.
Edwards would be a really interesting fight. There are a ton of fights that the UFC can make for him. They just need to capitalize on this now. Like he showed off for his fourth win. He looked amazing in that fight, and now they just get to show off. I mean, that choke was absolutely insane, and the
Oh, it was
fact that
brutal. Yeah. They
fact that
called
he
it a little
had
late too.
yeah, they did call it. Well, he wasn't tapping, so they're not allowed to call it until he taps. And Li
Yeah.
Jingliang, he's a warrior, man. He won't tap. He'll go to sleep before he'll tap, and you saw that. But it's crazy that he had him with the one arm, right? And like he was choking him out. You could tell Li Jingliang was struggling, but he wasn't quite there. And then just instantly switches to his other arm and gets
Yeah,
the choke
it was
out.
awesome.
Like just such high level MMA. It was absolutely insane, and it's going to be interesting to see him fight. Really quickly, I know we're a little bit over our time, but I want to go over the Glover fight and go over the Glover win. What an amazing story for Glover. I mean, guy's 42, guy's on his way out. Everyone's counting him out, and he's just an animal, man. He's a beast, and he showed it. He showed it this past Saturday, showing off his skills and showing off how good he is to get a takedown. Like I did not think he was going to be able to get a takedown against Jan. I thought, Jan's too big. Jan's a great wrestler. Like it's going to be really hard for him to get a takedown on Jan. But he got the takedown. He implemented his game plan. He got some nasty ground and pound, and then he got that choke out in the second round, and it was just good for him. Like glad he's there, and he even said he's going to continue to do it. Right? He said he's going to continue to break the rules, and I love that. He has a tough fight coming up in Yuri Prochaska, who's most likely going to be the next opponent. But like, I'm still excited to watch him, and I hope he can defend this a few times before he has to retire.
Yeah, he I mean, what do you think if he wins he'll keep going, but if he loses, like, is that it?
Yeah, as soon as he loses, I'm sure he's done. I'm sure he's happy to retire.
'Cause I think if he lost over the weekend, he'd be retiring
Yeah,
now.
I would agree. So I even thought there was a chance that he retired with the belt, and I mean
I
we've seen
mean,
it before.
yeah,
I
yeah,
thought there was like he's 42, man. Like you at heavyweight, he'd be able to keep competing no matter what. But at light heavyweight, and the guy doesn't cut too many pounds. Like he's not a huge imposing guy. You saw how much bigger Jan was overall. But like I don't know. It was super interesting. Just getting Jan down was like the number one thing for him. Everyone said that was the key to winning the fight for Glover is getting Jan down sometime in the fight. And he was able to do it without much trouble in the first round. Not only able to do it, but able to just like pick him up. Like you saw some real
yeah,
old man strength on display there.
yeah. Seriously.
And it was absolutely insane. All right. Any other thoughts for the UFC? We have a great card coming up with UFC 268 this upcoming week. You get a great title fight up top with Usman and Covington. Then you get Wei Li versus Namin Yunus. It's going to be a great card, and I'm so excited for. I'm more excited for 268 than I was for this past one. I think there's so many good fights to play out, and I get to see my favorite fighter, Justin Gaethje. I love Justin Gaethje, and I really hope he doesn't lose to Michael Chandler. So, any other thoughts for UFC and just for sports in general? And then after that, we'll get out of here.
No, I mean, I was just looking into some Derrick Henry stuff, and we actually do not get to talk about him for the stream in about 50 minutes because that game, Josh, is on Sunday night.
What do you mean?
The Titans game is on Sunday night, so they won't be on the main
Oh,
slate.
okay, gotcha, cool. Well, that's good. It means we get a week to digest like everything that's gonna happen. We don't have to take any long shot guesses on who they're gonna use at running back. We get to watch the whole
Right.
game. We get to digest it for week 10. All right, let's get out of here. By the way, before we get out of here, shout out to our sponsor, betonline.ag. If you were looking for something to do yesterday, you could have been betting with betonline.ag. I know I was even giving out live picks in the Good Skill chat room for the UFC card and doing some live betting in there with you guys, and we had a blast doing it. We ended up winning a couple bets. So it was really fun to bet with betonline.ag this weekend. I would highly recommend that you guys go sign up. If you need the link, it is luckily right there in our stream chat. It's from Nightbot, and they're the official sponsor for the 2021-2022 NFL season. Absolutely amazing. if you can bet anywhere with them, which is the best part, right? You don't need to worry about if you're in a state that doesn't allow betting, doesn't matter. You can still bet with them. And I really love to see that. And you get a bonus if you use that link. So make sure to use that link, get some money in your account, and you can bet on NFL with us. And Jared provides bets every week. I provide bets every week. We smash bets in college football. And I don't think we did that well in UFC, but we typically do pretty well in UFC. I think this week I didn't do well because I had a Jan Blachowicz parlay piece that did not work out for me at the end of the week because Glover's a beast. But anyway, make sure to go sign up with betonline.ag. Use that link in the chat that way so you can get that bonus that we were just talking about. And Jared, do you have anything to say about BetOnline before we get out of here?
No, just that they're. I keep saying this. I think that at this point in the season for football, the lines are pretty accurate for the most part, and they're actually really hard to judge and gauge. So the player props section is what we've been diving into over the past month. Didn't work out last night with Delvin Cook, but it's been repeatedly working when doubling down with some of our DFS plays, whether that be touchdowns, receptions, or things like that. So I think is a great way to double down and make some money, and did a little bit of both winning and losing this weekend.
Yeah, it's going to happen, but you're going to be back on the saddle tonight with some props, and I'm certainly excited to bet them, and you guys should be as well. All right, let's get out of here. As always, my name is Joshua Reimer. Good morning and good skill.